This video is brought to you by Panduil.com. Panduil sells thousands of electronics directly from China, including the ASUS Zenfone 2. Please be sure to check them out using the link in the video description. ASUS generated quite a bit of hype when they announced the Zenfone 2 back at CES 2015. Claiming to be comparable to higher-end flagships, many people were surprised when they discovered the phone's low price tag. So is the Zenfone 2 really a great phone, or is it being oversold in wake of tremendous amounts of hype? This is my full review of the ASUS Zenfone 2. Back in the fall of 2014, I reviewed one of the predecessors to the Zenfone 2, the Zenfone 5. At the time, the Zenfone 5 was one of the best budget smartphones available. ASUS got a lot of things right with the Zenfone 5, but the battery life and performance weren't as good as other budget phones being released at the time. Based on the specifications of the Zenfone 2, ASUS seems to have thought of everything. There are quite a few models available depending on each region, but for this review, I'll be taking a look at the ZE551ML Chinese model, which can be purchased from Panduil. This particular model has a 1080p display, Intel Atom Z3560 1.8 GHz processor, 4 GB of RAM, and 32 GB of storage. ASUS is selling models with 720p or 1080p displays, Z3560 or Z3580 processors, 2 or 4 GB of RAM, and 16, 32, or 64 GB of storage. ASUS has suggested $199 as being the starting price, but if you're going to import the phone, you'll likely pay a bit more. I'll do my best to make this review as representative as possible, but please do understand that your experience may be slightly different depending on the model you purchase. We'll start with the universal aspect of the Zenfone 2, the design. Unsurprisingly, the Zenfone 2 looks like a matured version of the Zenfone 5. Gone are the matte plastic finish and side buttons, however, as the Zenfone 2 has a brushed, glossy plastic rear cover with new button placements. The phone does look to take some inspiration from the LG G3, but manages to still fit well in the Zenfone lineup. The rear cover does look very nice, although it is prone to collecting scratches. It does, however, resist fingerprints quite well. The phone's curved design, which is similar to the Zenfone 5's, both looks great and feels great in the hand. The phone is 10.9mm at its thickest point, which is definitely on the thicker side, but it isn't really as noticeable in the hand as you may expect, thanks to the phone's curve. It does weigh in at 170 grams, which is about average for a phone with this size with a battery as large. ASUS's decision to remove the power and volume buttons from the side of the phone have allowed them to make the edge even thinner and the curve more pronounced. This makes the phone really easy to hold and operate and also gives it a very sleek look. The curves are also curved enough as to not dig into your hand while holding the phone. However, I will say that the black plastic wrapping around the display, which meets with the edges of the rear cover, does scratch and scuff really easily. Otherwise, the choice of materials here is top notch. Similar to how it is on the LG G3, the volume buttons are placed just below the camera on the back of the phone. I honestly didn't think I would like this at first, but it's actually one of my favorite design features of the phone. I was worried that these buttons would be either too difficult or too easy to press, but that does not seem to be the case, for me at least. While the buttons are easy to press, they are pretty resistant to accidental presses. The power button is at the top of the phone, in the center, and just as you may have expected, it is quite difficult to press. The button itself seems to have an average amount of responsiveness, but the placement makes the button difficult to reach. I'm not so much concerned about dropping the phone, but rather having to reach every single time I want to unlock or lock the phone. Luckily, ASUS did implement double tap to wake in addition to a bunch of other gestures, but I had to disable it on my unit since it was unlocking my phone when it was in my pocket. This wouldn't usually be a problem with a lock screen, but ASUS's Zen UI bypasses the lock screen completely if you're using Smart Unlock. I will talk about this in greater detail later in this review. The 13-megapixel camera is just above the volume keys at the top of the phone, and the two-tone flash is just above that. The ASUS logo is below the volume keys, and the Intel Inside logo is on the very bottom, just above the speaker grill. The speaker grill is on the bottom, but just as it was on the Zenfone 5, the speaker itself only outputs to about a third of the grill. That's quite unfortunate, but kind of expected. Finally, the micro USB port and primary microphone are on the bottom of the phone, while the headphone jack and secondary microphone are at the top. Taking a look at the phone's face, you'll notice a very professional looking chin, which can be found on all Zenfone devices, as well as 3 capacitive keys. The layout for these keys is not the standard Chinese layout, which is what we're used to, but it does match the Google's default layout for Android 5.0 Lollipop. Unfortunately, these keys do not illuminate, presumably to cut down on costs. There is an ASUS logo at the top, just below the earpiece, as well as a 5-megapixel front-facing camera to the right. Finally, there is a notification LED which pulses green for missed notifications, flashes red for low battery, and lights orange for charging. Kudos to ASUS for giving users the option to turn off the LED in the display settings. The 5.5-inch 1080p display looks excellent and has incredible viewing angles. There is plenty of contrast and sunlight readability is pretty good. The auto brightness is often too low in my opinion, so I kept the display brightness set to 75% during most of the review period. The lowest brightness setting isn't as low as I would have liked, but the overall range is still pretty good. ASUS has also added their Splendid color settings, which allows users to adjust the color temperature or select from a few presets. These adjust saturation and hue for specific tasks like reading. I think the display looks really great as it is actually, but I also love that ASUS is giving users the option to change it to their liking. The display is also coated with Corning Gorilla Glass 3, so you shouldn't have to worry about scratching it much. Finally, since this is a high-sensitivity touch display, you can enable glove mode, which allows you to use your phone while wearing gloves. Since there are so many different models of the Zenfone 2, each offering unique carrier support, I'm not going to discuss carrier support in this video. I will leave some information in the description if you want to learn more about which carrier each model supports, which I recommend that you do check out before purchasing. This phone does also support 802.11ac Wi-Fi. Call quality with the Zenfone 2 and the AT&T US network was very good with no dropped calls. The earpiece was nice and loud and callers reported hearing clear audio on their end. ASUS has also added the option to record phone calls, but please make sure that it is legal in your country before using this feature.
Press 1 to add money to your account. Press 2 to check your account balance. Press 3 for account information. Press 4 for promotion information.
The Zenfone 2's speaker sounds about average for this price. It's slightly distorted and it could be louder, but it does the job. It doesn't get as blocked as easily as you might expect, thanks to the phone's curved design. The 13-megapixel Toshiba rear camera with an f2.0 aperture took some good-looking photos. It comes with a dual LED two-tone flash as well as ASUS's Pixel Master technology for better low-light photos. The camera is certainly capable of producing nice-looking photos in the right lighting conditions, and low-light photos are actually pretty good as well. Now, of course, the camera isn't going to be as good as the ones found on flagship phones, but it's certainly pretty good at this price point. The 5-megapixel front-facing camera with an 85-degree wide-angle lens is also pretty good. The camera software is pretty easy to use with a whole bunch of shooting modes built in. You can also adjust white balance, ISO, exposure values, resolution, and also enable anti-shake enhancement mode as well as manually adjust optimization. I did record a 1080p sample video clip as well. What sets the Zenfone 2 apart from its competitors the most is perhaps the software. Shipping with Android 5.0 Lollipop along with ASUS's ZenUI skin, the Zenfone 2 offers one of the best software experiences at this price point. ASUS has incredible software support for their Zenfone devices, and unlike a lot of Android manufacturers, they actually release frequent firmware updates. Just as was the case with the Zenfone 5, ASUS is releasing software updates that fix bugs and also add to the user experience. And although it is currently running Android 5.0, I have no doubt that ASUS will update the Zenfone 2 to Android 5.1 and Android M when it is released later this year. The Zenfone 5 originally shipped with Android 4.2 Jelly Bean, was updated to Android 4.4 KitKat, and is just now receiving the Android 5.0 Lollipop update. In addition to this excellent software support, ASUS's ZenUI is one of the best Android skins that I have used. The user interface is sort of a spin-off of Android Lollipop, but feels very similar to previous versions of ZenUI. For example, the lock screen is very similar to the stock lock screen with notifications and the swipe up gesture, but it still retains some amount of uniqueness. Instead of having just the date and time, ASUS's lock screen also displays the weather conditions and allows users to quickly launch 3 apps of their choice. If you use a PIN, ASUS's lock screen has you enter that immediately when you go to unlock the phone, unlike stock Android where you have to swipe up first. While this is a great change, if you use Smart Lock with a Bluetooth device or trusted location for example, the phone just skips the lock screen entirely. Since I often use my Xiaomi Mi Band with whatever device I'm using really, I set this up and although I did appreciate not having to swipe up when intentionally trying to unlock the phone, the double tap to wake feature kept getting activated in my pocket. The phone also turns on the display whenever you receive a notification, so you're pretty much asking for trouble if you use this without a lock screen. Lock screen oddities aside, the rest of the software is pretty impressive. The notification panel looks very similar to stock Lollipop once again, although ASUS has applied a lighter skin and added the option to change the quick setting toggles. Finally! This is something that I really wanted in stock Lollipop, and I'm so glad that ASUS added this along with a whole bunch of useful toggles. ASUS has made it easier to access the notification panel by simply swiping down anywhere on the screen when you're in the launcher. Speaking of the launcher, it is slightly modified, but I really like the changes that ASUS has made here. You can just swipe up to customize everything from scroll effects to icon packs. You can also quickly navigate through the app drawer similar to what you can do with a contacts app, for example. I'm not really a fan of the ASUS keyboard to be honest, but you can download a third-party keyboard like the Google keyboard if you dislike it, which I happily did right away. The multitasking view also gives users the options to clear all apps with a single press, something that again is missing in the latest version of Android. Other features include an easy mode for a simplified user interface for users wanting just a core experience, the ability to set which types of notifications can bypass priority or no interruption modes, the ability to add scheduled downtimes, and the option to activate downtime during calendar events. There's also enhanced power management tools, which tell you exactly how much battery each app is using, as well as allow you to use smart battery saving modes. ZenMotion is also really useful as it adds touch gestures like double tap to wake and the ability to assign apps to specific letters. So for example, you can assign S to Snapchat and then lock your screen and draw an S and Snapchat launches. ASUS has added Shake Shake, which takes a screenshot and creates a task in the Do It Later app. More on that app in a bit. You can customize the function of pressing and holding the recent apps key to do nothing, take a screenshot, or show the menu. Finally, there's also a highly customizable one-handed mode, which can be enabled by either using the quick toggle in the toggles or by double tapping on the home button. So in addition to all of those great system software features, ASUS has bundled many apps with the Zenfone 2. There are a lot of apps that come pre-installed on this phone, but a lot of them are pretty good. You can disable some of them too if you prefer to have fewer installed apps. I'm going to quickly go through the noteworthy pre-installed apps alphabetically. So to start, we have ASUS Support, an app that gives you direct access to ASUS Support and news. Next there's Audio Wizard, which enhances audio output through the headphone jack. It's really simple and works very well. ASUS also has an Auto Start Manager app, which allows users to customize which apps are allowed to run during startup. The Backup app allows you to back up your apps and system data if you choose to reset your phone or just want an extra copy of your stuff. The Browser, Calculator, Calendar, Camera, Clock, and Contacts app are all just ASUS system apps with designs matching ZenUI. The Do It Later app is actually really useful. It syncs up with your Google Calendar to manage tasks and helps you get things done. What I really like about this app is how it integrates with everything else on the phone. For example, you can use the Shake Shake gesture to add a YouTube video to your Do It Later list so you can watch it, well, later. If you miss a call or have an unread email notification, you can add it to your Do It Later list for later addressing right from the notification panel. The email app is a really nice addition considering Google ripped the stock email app out of Lollipop. It's undoubtedly one of the better email clients available, and I actually preferred using it over the Gmail app. Continuing our app run through, customized apps include File Manager, Flashlight, FM Radio, and Gallery. I think those are all pretty self-explanatory. There is a Kids mode, which lets you keep your stuff separate from your child's apps or games. The messaging app is kind of customized, but I rarely use messaging apps anyway since I have all of my text messages go through Hangouts. There's also some less useful apps like Minimovie, Mirror, Music, and My ASUS. Of course, ASUS has bundled their Link apps, Party Link, PC Link, Remote Link, and Share Link. These all make it easier to share files and also connect and control your computer. Photo Collage makes a collage of your photos, Quick Memo lets you take notes, Sound Recorder allows you to record audio, and Supernote is yet another note-taking app. The Themes app connects to the ASUS community so you can download different system themes. The Weather app connects to AccuWeather to provide current and forecasted weather conditions. We also have web storage, which you get 5 GB of free lifetime storage with, and finally, What's Next, which gives you an overview of your day. I know I just mentioned that you get free ASUS web storage space, but you can also redeem an offer for 100 gigs of Google Drive space for 2 years within the Drive app. This is because of a partnership between ASUS and Google, but it does not work on the Chinese model unless you are using worldwide firmware. Speaking of region-based firmware, each model of the Zenfone 2 has unique firmware based on the intended market. This was a huge pain on the Zenfone 5 since it was really difficult to switch from Chinese to worldwide, which was necessary to get the Google apps like the Google Play Store. It's still not recommended, but it's much easier to flash the custom recovery and ROM package for a different phone SKU now with the Zenfone 2. I'm not going to go into much detail here since it's fairly easy and Pandawil does this before shipping anyways, but if you are interested, feel free to hit up the links in the description. We finally made it through software. Overall, I would have to say, although there are a lot of pre-installed apps, the software experience is one of the best available. It's awesome that ASUS is supporting their products too with frequent firmware updates. Day-to-day performance with the Zenfone 2 was pretty good thanks to the new, powerful Intel Atom processors. The Zenfone 5 seems to be fast enough for a budget device, but the Zenfone 2 really improves on speed, taking the base specification close to the Samsung Galaxy S5. Now, the Galaxy S5 is 1 year old, but keep in mind that this is a $200 phone. The base processor, which is the one that I have actually, is the Intel Atom quad-core Z3560 clocked at 1.8 GHz. There's also models with the Z3580, which is clocked at a slightly faster 2.3 GHz. You probably won't notice much difference unless you're comparing the phones side by side. The benchmark scores were 40,871 for Antutu and 747 single-core, 2,297 multi-core for Geekbench. The Zenfone 2 also handled gaming very well thanks to the PowerVR G6430 and 4 gigs of RAM. As mentioned earlier, ASUS is selling the Zenfone 2 with either 16, 32, or 64 gigabytes of storage. Regardless of the model you pick, you can always expand that storage with a microSD card, up to an additional 64 gigabytes. As expected, the Zenfone 2 has no problems with GPS or GPS navigation. Lock time was quick and navigation functioned just as expected. The 3000 mAh internal battery is certainly an improvement over the Zenfone 5's 2100 mAh battery, but it isn't as impressive as you may have expected. During my testing, the battery life was just really inconsistent and heavily depended on the display brightness actually. Since I'm usually in brighter environments, I kept the display brightness set to 75% for most of my testing. With that setting, the battery lasted from about 7 AM to about 9 PM with 3 hours of screen on time. It really just kind of depended on the day though, as I had another day where it didn't even last until 5 PM with about 3.5 hours of screen on time. It does appear that the Android OS is causing a significant amount of battery drain, so hopefully ASUS can improve that with a software update. As it stands, it's not bad, but it could be better. You shouldn't have a problem using it for 14 hours with 3 hours of average screen on time in use, but you also shouldn't expect it to last any longer than that. Luckily, it does charge really quickly thanks to ASUS's Boostmaster fast charging technology. ASUS claims that you can get from 0 to 60% in about 40 minutes with the right charger. Although they don't ship the base models with that charger, I was able to experience the fast charging speeds with a 2-amp charger. The Zenfone 2 does ship in a very unique box with a user manual, micro USB cable, and AC adapter. ASUS got a lot of things right with the Zenfone 2. Their intense attention to detail has proved to be fundamental to the user experience. It has a very good design, excellent display, good camera, amazing software experience and support for that matter, and great performance. And in my opinion, it's currently the best smartphone you can buy for under $300. That's not to say it's without its flaws, of course. The power button is still a bit difficult to reach, the speaker could be better, and the battery life isn't as impressive as some may have liked. So to conclude, it's not the perfect smartphone, but there's no such thing as the perfect smartphone. However, the Zenfone 2 is the closest thing we have to the perfect smartphone, and with ASUS's continued dedication to software updates, the experience is only to get better. If you are interested in the Zenfone 2, please make sure to check it out using the link in the video description to Pandawell's website. Also, I recently joined the Android Authority YouTube team, so please go subscribe to that channel if you want to see more of my content. As always, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Also, feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions or want to discuss the ASUS Zenfone 2. That is going to be all for this video. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to subscribe.